This is the Financial Beat, helping you hit all the right notes in your financial plan. So sit back as we strike up the band. The Financial Beat with Logan Sadler starts now.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're back now with another edition of the Financial Beat, starring the one and only Logan Sadler, international star of stage and screen and radio and podcasts and everything else. I'm just kidding. This is Ron Stutz, and I always love hanging out with Logan Sadler, who is the Vice President and Chief Investment Officer at Regary Financial. Makes me feel smart just by hanging out with Logan, I'm telling you. Logan, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good now after that intro. I feel great. But looking forward to a good show, and hopefully a lot of the listeners out there, wherever it is you are, hopefully you're doing well as also.
Logan Sadler is the Vice President and Chief Investment Officer at Regary Financial, serving you in Southern California, a couple of offices, Hemet, Redlands. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call if you'd like to arrange a conversation with Logan that's not going to cost you a penny. We call it a discovery meeting. You discover things about him. He discovers things about you. It's kind of a, get acquainted session. 888-823-PLAN. Good thing about that is you get lots of good information, get to know Logan a little bit, and it's not going to cost you a penny, not going to obligate you to do anything at all. Logan, before we went on the air today, you were talking about a survey that you read about recently, the Charles Schwab Modern Wealth Survey of 2023. And I guess, modern wealth being the key here, a lot of people used to consider themselves rich at a certain level, and now that's certainly changed. And this was an online study conducted for Charles Schwab by Logica Research. Logica Research is neither affiliated with nor employed by Charles Schwab and Company Incorporated. So, what did you gather from reading this, Logan? What are some of the important points that you'd like to tell our listeners about?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I mean, I always love these surveys because, as I always tell people, right, it's just a survey. It just gives you a general intake of what some of the population thinks about certain things. And this show happens to be about financials, right? So it's going to talk about financials. And I think one of the biggest things is these are always great just to kind of bring up some good little nuggets and things like that. And I've done a video on this, so we always talk about YouTube. So there is a video coming as well to go over some of the graphs because it was quite a lengthy survey, but there was just some good points there. And I think one of the things, it's conducted by over 1,000 adults, right? The other thing I thought was really interesting, Ron, is of those, the adults had to be between 21 to 75 years old to qualify.
Wow.
Right, so you got boomers, you got Gen X, you got millennials, and Gen Z in there. And as you know, I meet with a lot of boomers and Gen X, and so it's funny because their intake might be a little bit different than the younger generation, right? So It makes these surveys kind of fun where you can see where some of the stuff would come from. But the one thing I think that was the big, bold thing that a lot of people took away with it is people ask me all the time, what do you need to be considered wealthy in today's world, right? And it's really a hard question to answer because the first thing is, how do you define wealth, right? And I thought this survey did that very well, where it talks about, the average money needed to be wealth, the average net worth, including everything, right, is $2.2 million. Right, which is a lot higher than I would think some people might have thought of. A lot of us we talk about it all the time on the show, you need $1 million, right? It's dramatically up, right? So the 2.2 million, which is a lot higher. But what I thought was interesting, Ron, is 48% of Americans feel wealthy have $560,000 of a net worth, right? So I thought that was kind of interesting. So those of you out there that aren't at that $2 million range but are thinking, you know what, I feel pretty good about my situation with about $500,000, right? That's great. And this also breaks down some other things here as far as which we'll dive into. But I thought I did a good job of just kind of breaking down those topics there. The crazy part is of that, majority of the younger generation, as you could probably guess, the millennials and things like that, is they actually valued their time more than their wealth, right? So we've talked about, isn't that interesting? I think we've talked about that a time or two, where a lot of people out there in the younger workforce are you may be taking less pay to work from home, or maybe taking less pay to have more of a free lifestyle where they can kind of do what they want when they want type of thing.
Yeah.
And the older generation probably valued money more, right? Where they were a little bit more harder working in some areas. And so I thought it just did a good job of kind of breaking that down overall.
Before we get into this, all these numbers and everything, first of all, that's really interesting. I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of this, but I guess it might be helpful to define these generations that we're talking about here. First of all, the boomers, folks primarily between 58 and, let's say, 75. And Generation Xers are from the low 40s to the upper 50s. And then millennials are folks between the ages of, let's say, 26 and 41. And then Generation Z would be really young folks between 21 and 25. And I know that the priorities for all these different groups will be quite different. Now, I'm looking forward to hearing what else you have to say about this Charles Schwab survey.
Yeah, great spot there, Ron. Way to stop it and go back, because that's super important, right? A lot of people go, well, what am I, right? And a lot of people, like the millennial generation, is very misunderstood in some areas because a lot of people aren't aware how large it is, how wide of a gap, right? So 26 to about 41, like you said, that's a pretty deep gap there. I think a lot of people think millennials are always in their 20s, right? So it's crazy to think how wide of a gap that is. And then obviously Gen X and baby boomers.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy. So when you look through the survey, I think it's just interesting because it defines how a lot of us think about wealth, right? And what we kind of need and or maybe visualize when we're looking at things like that. And it was just very interesting because, time versus money, right? I think that's a very big thing. When you look at millennials, or I'm sorry, let's talk about having time, right? So 61% of people thought that having time was more important than having money, right? Meaning how much time can we buy, right? When we go to work, we're essentially exchanging a time for money, a time for pay. Gen Z thought that was 58% of it was more important, right? Millennials thought 56% of it was more important, and Gen X thought 59%, right? So I thought that was a pretty good kind of gap there as far as those go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's kind of interesting how each generation, like you were saying, Ron, values some different things there.
I'm still hung up on what you said earlier about how 48% of Americans feel wealthy when, the average net worth of those who feel wealthy is $560,000. And I think a lot of people probably listening to the show may be a little surprised by that.
Yeah, I think the best part about it is, which I think I said on the video I did, was, it's one of those things where when you're looking at wealth, it's all what does it mean to you, right? What does wealth mean to you? For some of us, it's happy families and health and things like that. For other of us, maybe it's a blend of, family and health, and also maybe some financial matters, right? Where a lot of us like to get accustomed to a certain lifestyle. We want to kind of do what we want when we want type of thing. And it is interesting because I tell clients that all the time, right? There's clients that come in, Ron, that have $400,000 saved for retirement. And it's quite interesting how when you look at their plan, they have a pretty high income, right? You look at maybe pensions, you look at some Social Security, and then some investments they might have with that net worth might give them everything they need to feel wealthy in retirement.
Yeah.
There's some clients out there that might have that $2.2 million to be considered wealthy in today's world that it might not be enough, right? They're used to a very extreme lifestyle of high spending and high income and a lavish lifestyle, and they might need more than the $2.2 million, right? So I think it's all about how it fits into your situation, and I'm excited, like we said, on the next segments, we'll dive further, but diving further into some of the other planning topics that I think were important for some of the different generations as well.
Well, I'll tell you, I do not fit into this group, but I figure that, those folks, those younger folks who are coming along now, saying that having time is more important than having money, that's fascinating to me. And, I kind of feel that way, too. I wish everybody did, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it is funny. The other thing, too, I thought was the social media impact on the survey, which you can go down to, on the later pages. But it was just interesting. It kind of breaks it down where as you look at the younger influence there, like mainly, the Gen Zs, millennials, and things like that, they follow influencers who share financial advice on social media, right? 43% of the total population or the total generations were getting it from there. But if you look at Gen X and millennials especially, 59% of Gen Zs get their information from an influencer or social media. Right? I thought that was very high. And millennials, same thing, 59%, but it drops down with Gen X and the baby boomers there. It goes from like 34 to like 15%, right? So you could see kind of the skid there. I think it's very interesting to see the impact of social media, and obviously that's why we do YouTube videos and the podcasts and all that stuff. But it is interesting to me where people get their financial information from now is so different than 10 years ago, right? Because we might have went to the radio, we might have went to the newspaper or books, and now we go on YouTube and type in, hey, I'm getting ready to retire. What should I do with my 401k, right? Or how much income do I need saved? So it is interesting how the younger generations for sure are very, very affluent, especially getting things from social media or influencers is where they get a lot of their views on financials.
Yeah, social media has become such a big influence in everybody's lives, particularly those younger folks for sure. And we'll talk more about that and other things that were revealed in this survey. I find this quite interesting, Logan. Great job bringing this to everybody's attention. And I'm going to give out the number for folks to get in touch with you. But when you meet with somebody for the very first time, and I even hesitate to call it a meeting, it's more of just a conversation, what kinds of things are you going to talk about?
Yeah, one of the things we cover at our discovery meeting, like you said, or our discovery conversation, really is just more of getting to understand kind of like what the survey is talking about, Ron, is what is important to you, right? When you look at your financial plan, what is more important to you? Is it higher income? Is it leaving behind assets to family for that legacy play? Is it making sure that you have more of a peace of mind in retirement, right? Maybe less volatility, or maybe you want more volatility in retirement, but just kind of getting to understand what retirement means to you, and telling you a little bit about our firm and how our process and how our history has been there to help provide sound financial advice for many, many, many people across the United States in getting to and through retirement. And we just kind of share our story of our firm, and we want to understand your story of you and your family and see if we're a good fit to help get you to and through retirement and be the ones to help guide you through all these tricky situations. And as we call it, put the puzzle pieces together for your retirement plans.
Tricky if you try to do it yourself. 888-823-PLAN. 888-823-PLAN. Your number to call if you'd like to get in touch with Logan Sadler, Vice President, Chief Investment Officer at Rigary Financial. 888-823-7526. But make it easy on yourself. Just remember the word plan, which is essential for all of us. 888-823-PLAN. Logan Sadler works with 3 different generations of client families, and so he's well acquainted with all the folks that we're talking about here in this survey. And many of those clients, particularly those boomers, have been with the firm for more than a quarter of a century. So talking to all age groups here today, and a lot of interesting information from a survey that Logan Sadler has found, and we'll share more information on that coming up in just a moment. You're listening to The Financial Beat.
It's getting to know you time.
You're listening to The Financial Beat with Logan Sadler. And Logan, time for one of those crazy getting to know you questions. I know you really look forward to these off-the-wall questions. Which famous person in history would you want to spend a day with?
I'm a big sports guy, right? So you got Kobe, you got Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
A lot of those types of people. I also love, it'd be interesting to hear. Tiger Woods is another one. Elon Musk would be someone to be a fun day to sit down and see what's going on in his head. There's so many people. I really don't think I can narrow that down to one. If any one of those ones wanted a day with me, I'd be more than willing. And you also think about some of the Benjamin Franklins, or you look at like George Washington, some of those older ones. I would love to see what was going on back in the day in their head. Obviously, those they've all passed, but just kind of those would be some ideas of what I would love to sit down with. It's probably way too hard to find one of them, but if any one of them wanted to, I'd be more than open to it.
My feelings are really hurt. I thought you might like to spend a whole day with me. Come on.
Yeah. Well, I get to spend the day with you pretty much every week here, which I'm very lucky I get to do that.
Not the whole day.
Yeah, a couple
just
an hour, right?
That's right. We'll be back with more in just a moment. You're listening to The Financial Beat with Logan Sadler.
Fishing is an art, and any fisherman worth his salt knows the proper tools to land a whopper. You wouldn't take a cane pole to catch a bass, and unless you're just looking for a tranquil day on the boat, you probably wouldn't use shrimp for bait on the lake. The same can be said of your retirement. There are all sorts of financial products out there, and it's important to know which ones are the right fit for you. A random jumble of investments won't do you much good in retirement. Work with an advisor who knows how to fish. who sees the art within. A well-crafted financial plan will go a long way toward making a successful retirement. Make sure you're putting the right tools in your portfolio.
In Southern California, call Logan Sadler and the Regari Financial Team at 888-823-PLAN. That's 888-823-7526.
Do you ever find yourself skipping through countless songs trying to find the perfect one? Yeah, we've been there too, and know it can be frustrating. Much like skipping through the countless advertisements from other financial advisors, it can seem like there's so much misinformation. But here on the Financial Beat, you can rest assured we're providing you with the best information possible. So don't push skip on this show, because we have some important information coming up.
We're back now with more of the Financial Beat. Logan Sadler is on the radio, and Logan not only has this radio show every week, but also has a variety of YouTube videos that are available. And Logan, talk about that for just a second. What kind of things are on the YouTube videos, and how do folks get to those?
Yeah, you can head over to YouTube, type in the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, and there's lots of different videos on there. You'll see our page there, click on it. And basically, it brings you to our page where we have, things of, are you retiring earlier than planned, right? Looking at the 6 surprising facts about retirement that you'll need to know, different types of annuities and Social Security options and things like that. So making sure it just kind of gives you lots of different little tidbits there on many different topics when it comes to retirement planning. Head over there, click subscribe, like a video or a comment, and let us know maybe some other videos you want us to do here in the future. We'd be happy to get to them.
888-823-PLAN is your number to call if you would like to have a conversation with Logan, either via Zoom or in one of the offices in Hemet or Redlands. 888-823-PLAN, 888-823-PLAN. Let's talk about technology and financial planning. Technology has certainly changed the way that most people live their lives, but also do their financial planning. What are the pros and cons of Google, for example? Tell us the good stuff and the bad stuff as far as Google is concerned.
Yeah, Google has everything, right? Or mainly everything. You can type in any type of situation and it'll give you some type of an answer or some type of information on it. And it can be very good for a lot of different things, right? The problem with a lot of it for financial planning is it might not understand your situation, right? And I think that's the biggest thing is you can find some really good generic information on there, but it's not maybe, like I've seen some clients are like, I found a good thing about this annuity, or I found a bad thing about this annuity, or a good thing about this stock or fund or whatever it is, right? And I always say that's what the internet's for. You could always find good things about certain things and bad things, right? And so just kind of understanding that it might give you some good general insight, but it might not give you everything you need to know about your situation. And I think that's where Google can be valuable for certain things. But when it comes to financials, I think typically there might be some other resources that might be a little bit more appropriate. Or, if you're looking to take a deeper dive on why it pertains to your situation, getting some, actual literature from that fund or that stock or that annuity or whatever it is directly from the companies and things like that might be a little bit more useful. And obviously, consulting with a qualified advisor that can give you some honest input and advice on those situations probably is a little bit better. But Google can be a good thing for some and also more confusing in other ways for others.
Yeah, and you can find a lot of things on there that just are not true. I mean, people write things with an agenda, and, you can get into trouble if you believe everything you read, for sure.
Oh, man.
I've
Absolutely.
heard a lot about robo-advisors, and people have talked about, how robo-advisors are great, but I've heard even more people say that I wouldn't touch a robo-advisor. What are the pros and cons of that?
Yeah, I think the pros of the robo-advisor is they're cheap, right? You could pay an advisor and you have some type of pay a robo-advisor and have some type of a management style to it, whether it's trendy or whether it's active or passive. It really just depends on the advisor. Most of them, they're going to put you in a 60-40 stock bond mix or a 80-20 or whatever your risk score says, and they manage it, right? And the nice part is you get some pretty low-cost funds. You pay a robo-advisor anywhere from like 0.1% to 1% I've seen, right? Mm-hmm. So they're a little bit cheaper. Some advisors, depending on net worth and things like that and business structure, might charge 1% or 1.5% or whatever the fees are. So you typically could save some money on the robo-advisor and typically get maybe a little bit better service than just doing it yourself, right? They might give you a little bit of some added value there. For some of us where we don't know, hey, if we want to buy the S&P, what S&P fund should we buy, right? The robo-advisor might be okay with that. The downside, Ron, is the customization isn't there, right?
Yeah.
You just get basically a broad scope of funds or stocks or whatever you're in, and they don't, in my opinion, do a whole lot of financial planning, right? They might be okay for managing some investments, but for managing emotions, right? Where if you want to sell off, they're not going to talk you through it. They're just going to sell off if you tell them to sell off, right? So I think getting that extra value and the advice you would typically need from an advisor, that is what a lot of people pay for nowadays, right? You pay for the financial advice and the financial plan, and the management comes with it typically, right?
Yeah.
Just to have someone manage your account, maybe the robo-advisors might be okay for that, but a lot more of our clients are looking for the more broad-scoped financial plan to help, again, orchestrate what taxes should we be doing? How are we managing our emotions? What's our income plan going to look like? Things like that are typically a little bit more outside the scope of the financial robo-advisor.
Yeah, and as you said, put another way, it takes away the human element. And I know a lot of what you do is based on relationships. You get to know your clients, you get to know what's important to them, and as we've said so many times before, there's no one size fits all, no generic way for financial planning. How about online calculators? Give us the pros and the cons.
Yeah, some of those calculators, in my opinion, could be awesome, right? There's some good things about them where it gives you a good idea of like saving. I know there's some saving calculators you can go on there. If I saved $500 a month for 30 years and it gave me a 6% return, what would I potentially have, right? Those are fun. Those are good for especially your younger kids where they're like that survey, right? Maybe they're millennials or Gen Z or Gen X or whatever age, and they're trying to get started. It might be a good thing to show you some things about income. Certain income calculators can be okay to show you some different, how much can I realistically maybe draw, stuff like that, right? There can be some pros to them for sure. The downside, Ron, is there can be some cons to them, right? Where I've looked at, like one guy was showing me his calculator he was using where it goes, based off this, I'm going to get $5,000 a month in retirement off my portfolio. Mm-hmm. And I go, well, that seems a little high for what you have in there, right? Let's look up that calculator. And it's showing, if he projected an 8% return, right, which the investments he were in would not produce an 8% return, right? And the other thing was it was factoring in Social Security. Yeah. So the $2,000 a month Social Security was in there. So realistically, at an 8% return, he could have only drawn out about, it was around $3,000 a year, again, including that high return in there, right? Yeah. And he goes, well, Logan, the S&P has averaged, 8% or 10% or 11%, whatever year you're looking at it, has averaged that over a period of time. And I go, but sir, you only have 50% of your money in the S&P, right? The rest of it's in bonds that have averaged 2 or 3% or 4%. Yeah. So your return's not going to be 8 or 9%. So it is interesting where some of those calculators get you into trouble. And that's where I think, again, the advisor should be there to help utilize calculators and planning software, but also realistically more plug in what's realistic based off your current investments and expectations.
You're listening to the Financial Beat. You want to get in touch with Logan Sadler at Regary Financial. It's 888-823-PLAN, 888-823-PLAN. We're talking about technology and financial planning, and technology has certainly changed the way that most people do their financial planning. Another thing to consider is the do-it-yourself trading platforms like E-Trade and Scottrade, that kind of thing. Tell us about the pros and cons of that sort of situation.
Yeah, I think doing it yourself and things like that can be good for some people. Like I said, I've actually came across, Ron, as I've talked about, I think before, some stories and stuff where I've had some clients that have done very, very well, or I wouldn't even call them clients because they didn't decide to come on board. They did things themselves and they've done a decent job. Is there things I would do differently or some things I think would improve the plan? Yeah, absolutely. But in their situation, they were doing okay, and where they were at probably wasn't going to hurt with how things were structured. There's other times where I've met people that are doing it themselves or thinking about doing it themselves, and it's their expectations or their reality or their current plan has, almost a 0% chance of working out, right? And I think the advisor, that's part of what our job is to be able to, people think of an advisor as like the old days, right? Where, hey, I'm going to call up Logan once a week and he's going to buy me a stock and he'll get paid a commission and we're all good and hopefully the stock goes up, right? Well, that's not really what a lot of advisors are there to do or what they shouldn't be there to do. A lot of it should be, you should have the, obviously the tools and things like that to provide investments. So yeah, stocks, bonds, mutual funds or annuities or insurance products, all of that stuff is typically important and most people need some of that in their plan. that is important, but also orchestrating if we took this amount of income, here's where you'd run out of money. Or, if you're taking this type of risk, if the market went down 30%, here's realistically what could happen to your portfolio, right? Coaching him through a lot more of that, as well as tax planning and all that other stuff, where to me, that is a lot more of where the advisor should be able to show value, as well as, yes, managing investments and having decent returns and things like that is everything we hope for. But orchestrating a lot of the other things that some do-it-yourselfers might not be looking at, as well as might not have access to, right? Like private equity investments, annuities, or certain insurance products you don't have access to without an advisor. So it's hard to do all of it yourself.
And one last thing I wanted to ask you about here, Logan, is, I know a lot of people who spend a lot of time watching the cable channels that are dedicated to financial news, and those things can really get you in trouble. And I guess the number one thing you need to be concerned about is what you're getting from that really information that you can use, or is it designed to, get more viewership?
Yeah, good point, right? I mean, I think a lot of it is the TV it's all a soap opera nowadays, right? And so I had a client tell me that the other day, and I was laughing. I go, yeah, he's probably right. But, the whole thing is for ratings, right? And do they have some good tips on there? Probably, right? There's some good tips on some of those shows. But that's all the tips, right? I wouldn't take it as financial advice, and I wouldn't say, hey, I'm going to build my plan based off what somebody says at 6 a.m. on a TV show, right? I would want to know, well, what's the risk of that? How does it fit into my plan? Do I have the money to risk to do that? And what would be the outcome if it worked or didn't work, right? So typically I wouldn't base things off what I see on a cable channel, and I'd want to make sure I'm actually speaking with an advisor to get direct news and information and tips and guidance on my situation. And for those of you out there, I know a lot of you that have been listening to the radio show that have been coming in, which I've been meeting with tons of you guys throughout the last few months, and it's been great to meet you and appreciate the feedback on the show. But a lot of you guys out there, you've accumulated $500,000 or $1 million or $3 million, whatever the number is, right? And you're 60 years old, 50 years old, and you're looking for someone to help give you the guidance and confidence you need in your financial plan. And a lot of you guys have an advisor or don't have an advisor and are looking for ways to maybe enhance or to really get a little bit more familiarity with your plan and what your situation looks like. And that's exactly what our firm's here to do. We give you a complimentary discovery meeting where we'll sit down and just really try to dig into what it is you're looking for, how you envision retirement, and just seeing if we're a good fit to be the ones to help get you to and through retirement. As we say, that is our specialty. And again, it doesn't cost anything to come in and sit down with me and just see if we're a good fit. And as we say, you actually sit down with me. We don't pass you off on anybody else. You come in, sit down with me at one of our offices or via Zoom, and we could see if we're a good fit and our team's a good fit to help transition you to and through retirement.
At Regary Financial, they have terrific partnerships with local CPAs, attorneys, real estate agents, mortgage lenders, Medicare specialists, and can offer you well-rounded guidance in everything financial. Logan Sadler is the person you will talk to if you arrange that discovery meeting. Logan Sadler's number, 888-823-PLAN, 888-823-PLAN. Go ahead and call that number today. And if you do, certainly leave your name, your phone number. You will get a call back first part of the week, and then you can arrange to have your conversation with Logan at a convenient time. Could be in one of the offices, either Hemet or Redlands, or you might want to have a Zoom connection. That's easy too. Either way, won't cost you anything and won't carry with it any kind of obligation at all. Logan Sadler's number, once again, at Regary Financial is 888-823-PLAN. You're listening to the Financial Beat, and we'll have more coming up after this quick timeout.
Did you know music is good for the heart? A study at a university in Italy showed that music helps promote a better cardiovascular system. But we also know that a sound financial plan is good for peace of mind. Keep listening to the Financial Beat so we can help you find a plan that both your head and your heart can agree on.
And the beat goes on, as they say, the Financial Beat. Logan Sadler, VP Chief Investment Officer at Regary Financial, serving you in Southern California. Remember that Regary has a couple of convenient offices, Hemet and also Redlands. It's always fun to talk to Logan every week on this show, and today we're exploring what we've learned from this survey that Logan Sadler has found. We'll get back to that in just a second here, but 888-823-PLAN is your number to call if you'd like to find out more about Logan Sadler, how he does business. You can get to know him without any kind of obligation at all. Not going to cost you one penny to have a conversation. It can be via Zoom, Or you might want to come into one of the convenient offices. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call, 888-823-PLAN. Reach out today to Regari Financial and arrange your conversation with Logan Sadler, 888-823-PLAN. You're calling during the show. Just leave a message with your name and phone number. You will get a call back first part of the week, and then you can definitely make it happen. One more time, 888-823-PLAN. Getting back to this really interesting Charles Schwab survey that Logan has, I see that about a third of Americans, we always talk about how important it is to have a plan, something that's actually written down, that's tangible. You can reach out, you can touch it, you can read it, whatever. But about a third of Americans have a documented financial plan, and those who have one have a lot more peace of mind, and they also feel like they're more in control of their lives, right?
Yeah, it's funny. That's right where I was going with this, Ron. As you look at, we talk about it all the time. I have a financial plan. Well, as I always say, well, perfect. Bring it in. Let's review it. Oh, well, I don't have it written, or I don't have, and it's like, oh, I just have it in my head, right? And so, one of the things I always think so important is, like you said, is only about 65% of the people in the survey have no formal financial plan, right? That is a large portion, right? So when you look at that, because a lot of people when they retire, they go, well, I'll take Social Security maybe at 65 or maybe at 66, and then if I need some money here and there, I'll pull from my IRA as I need to. If I got maybe $400,000 there, so it'll last me a few years if I pull some money out of it. And then what I'll do is, if I need some money down the road, I'll just take a little bit more, right? And that's the plan, right?
Yeah.
And as you know, there's as I would look at that, there's many holes to the plan as far as what happened if you just take too much out. It's at the wrong time. How long would the income you're taking out actually last if you had a good return, a bad return, sideways return, right? Inflation, longevity, all these things that are going to come up. So having a formal plan to me is super, super important. I thought it was very interesting. 40% of those people, right, of the 65, have thought about financial goals and things like that, but they don't have any formal plan, right? 26% of them don't have a financial plan of any kind. Right. So it's such a large portion of people where, and again, many of you guys have done very well and have assets and probably have a pretty good idea of what retirement would look like, but not having it documented to me is just one of those things where it could really cause some holes. And one of the things we're real fond of, Ron, is we call it stress testing the portfolio and the plan, right? What happens if Joe passed away early? How would Sue live, right? How would her retirement income continue? Would she have to take more income, less income? If Joe and Sue lived till 90, right, how would their plan work out? Would they still have money left over like they had planned, or would they be pushing it, right? So I think, as you can see, I can go on and on about that for days, but just having that documented plan. But hopping over to the other side, as you had mentioned, Ron, 35%, right, of the 35% have a determined financial goals and documented them in a formal plan. 92% of that 35 feel confident that they'll reach their goals, right? So as you can see, as far as the other side of 26%, right, it's crazy how having that documented financial plan and going through the actual plan, it actually does give a lot of people confidence that, you know what, the retirement I envisioned is achievable and sustainable, right? I think that's what we all want to know. Nobody wants a good retirement plan for 5 years and then we'll see what happens after that, right? Yeah. Having something that's sustainable is something that's really important. So I thought it was very important when you look at the survey, and we'll break down this next section here, but like you said, Ron, it's so important when you look at how important documenting things are and making sure you're actually, as we call it, sizing up your situation and seeing where you'll land. And then obviously we could talk in the next page there, Ron, about not having enough money and things like that.
Yeah. Well, one thing that comes to mind with all of this stuff, those folks, let's say a third of the population out there, they have a plan and they have peace of mind. On the other side of this thing, those folks with no plan or really haven't thought that much about it, I mean, they have a whole bunch of uncertainty in their lives.
For sure, yeah. And when you look at retirement, I don't think people like to have, we all know there's going to be uncertainty, right? But we would like to limit the amount of uncertainty if we can. And like you said, having a plan, I mean, the statistics are there where it's going to show that the odds come down or the odds go up as far as making sure you have a documented plan. And it's funny, Ron, because it has on this survey as well, as we could jump into, is, the barriers to financial planning, right? It's funny where it breaks it down again, which I love, between the 4 generations there. A lot of 44% they feel they don't have enough money to need a plan,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Breaks it down again, like Gen Z was 38%, Millennials 38%, Gen X 48%, and Boomers 52%. So they don't feel they have enough money to actually need a plan, which, as we found earlier, could be further from the truth, where maybe you don't have the $2 million or the $5 million, right? But you might have 300, or you might have 200 or 500, and it might still be a lot of money where if orchestrated correctly and put into a plan could maybe be a little bit more effective.
You know, it seems like the older you go with these folks, you know, all the way from Gen Z to boomers, you would think that the boomers would have a whole lot more, money set aside, and they would feel like they had enough money to put together a plan, because they really need a plan at that point. But it really doesn't go up all that much.
No, and you know what's funny is that some of the, and it shocked me a little bit too, because some of our older generation, the baby boomer generation, they are very, very intelligent with planning and have thought about it a lot, right? So it surprised me that their numbers were actually lower in this survey. Again, not constituting this as being correct or anything like that, just kind of basing it off the numbers that were provided. It is interesting, and I think one of the things that a lot of people are proud of the younger generation is, believe it or not, some of them are actually pretty savvy with investments and planning, and maybe see the value in it. And not saying, millennials or Gen X or boomers don't, but like you said, it's weird in the numbers on this one. As we can go through the next couple here, it's weird how the numbers kind of seem to mirror that.
Yeah. A lot of folks, 44% again of folks in this survey felt like they didn't have enough money to need a plan. But then there are some folks, about 1 in every 5, who think that, it's just too complicated to create a plan, and they don't want to do it.
Isn't that funny, Ron? Like you said, you look across the sections there, 21% seems too complicated to create a plan. And when you break it down, Gen Z says 28%, Millennials 26%, Gen X 22%, and baby boomers, again, down there at the 15% range.
Yeah.
So it is kind of interesting how, as we've shown you, it's not that complicated to create a plan. You just have to have the right team to help put it together.
Some folks think it's going to take a whole lot of time on their part, and they say, hey, I don't have time for this. I mean, about 20% of the people here, on average, say they don't have enough time to create a plan, which is ridiculous.
It's funny you brought that one up, because our founder of our firm, Hugh Regary, obviously, who started our firm years and years ago, he used to always say, and is this actually statistic? I always thought he was right, but now I know he's right based off the survey, right? It was people will spend more time planning a vacation than they will their retirement, right? And it's funny because this seems here like we're out. I have doctors that work so many hours, or Edison workers that are working lots of hours, or whatever sector it is, right? And they'll find, if it's important to them, they'll find the time to come in. They'll find the time to make the financial plan important. But like you said, many people, they put that on the back burner.
Yeah, exactly. And, like you said, I know that when we go on vacation, we spend a lot of time deciding, where we're going to go out to eat, and you gotta,
That's funny.
you gotta decide, where you're going to stay and all those kinds of things. But you end up spending more time on that than you do that is something that is, in the long run, much more important. Also, there are a number of folks who haven't had some kind of a major life event that meant requiring a plan. And when you talk about a major life event, what kind of events are you talking about here?
Yeah, I mean, what's funny is that's very true. I found this where most of the time, Ron, where I'm meeting with people, it's because they've had a major life event, whether it's maybe a spouse passed away, right? That could be a major life event where, he or she handled the finances. Now I'm 55 years old or 60 years old or whatever age, and I'm trying to get things on track to retire or to just keep our house in order. Others might be divorce. I mean, with a lot of clients where they're getting divorced, and again, maybe he or she handled the finances, or they just have some obstacles they need to talk through to get some further advice on. Many things like that, right? Or inheritance, right? Maybe they've inherited money, and now they're like, hey, I've never had money before, and now I have $500,000 or a few $1 million. What am I supposed to do with it to do things correctly? So I'd say those are probably some of the life events that they're talking about here, and that is typically where I will see people come in that have put that on the back burner until a life event occurs.
Yeah, and another one would be a major, illness of some kind. That's
true too.
It's
Yep.
really chaotic in some ways. When you have to figure out exactly what to do.
Yeah, it's always something to think about, right? When I've dealt with many people in this situation, a couple of them recently, like I said, where maybe health came up and things like that have drastically changed, and they need to get some advice of how to pivot and maybe get a plan together to orchestrate through that.
A lot of people out there think that and it's going to be too expensive to get help creating a plan. In other words, we've talked about this before. A lot of people think, they're scared to give you a call or any financial advisor a call because they think it's going to cost them a whole lot of money. And you have to think about that.
Yeah, it's true. And it's funny because on the numbers here, about 17%, right? They think it's probably too expensive. And the numbers actually go down towards the boomers where I think they actually value the planning more. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is because, like we always say on this show, right? What got you to retirement doesn't always get you through retirement, right? Yeah. And I think the biggest thing is those older generations or the generations approaching that retirement phase, we always say a lot of people don't get hurt going up Mount Everest, right? Majority shows a lot of the higher percentages get hurt coming down Mount Everest, right? Mm-hmm. So the decumulation phase can be one of the trickiest parts. And I think a lot of people look at the cost of having an advisor, but they don't look at the cost of if they didn't have an advisor, right? Yeah. What if you didn't have someone to help talk you through that situation where you sold out of that stock or mutual fund when maybe you shouldn't have? Or maybe you didn't look at the options of maybe using a lifetime income annuity and if it would benefit your plan, or tax situation. What if a Roth conversion made sense and an advisor had recommended it? Could it have saved you tens of thousands of dollars in some cases, right? I mean, there's so many of those scenarios where I think enough people don't talk about the value that a financial advisor should bring, not just returns, right? Returns are very important, but it's probably not the most important thing when you look at the overall plan of how it would orchestrate. The advisor should be able to bring way more value than what the cost is. Again, you want to make sure cost and fees are reasonable and understand how you're paying your advisor. But I think a lot of people don't understand the importance and the cost of if they didn't have an advisor.
Yeah, and one thing we haven't talked about is the fact that, when you're going up the mountain, you're getting to retirement, maybe you're doing a good job accumulating assets in the accumulation phase. But then when you're coming down and when you're retired and you need to live off whatever income streams you have, that is a totally different process. And you can help folks create those income streams that will get them through the rest of their lives.
Absolutely. That's our specialty, as we specialize in helping people get to and through retirement. And like you said, I mean, not everybody needs help going up the mountain, but a lot of people out there need help coming down the mountain in that distribution phase and getting a financial plan together that is, number one, you feel confident in, and number two, you understand the intricate parts of what would happen if things don't work out or you don't follow the plan, right? And I think, as we found from the survey here, one of the biggest things I always take away from things like this is the importance and the success rate of the people that have a documented plan, and how their success and confidence in retirement has gone up by simply having a plan in place and understanding what is realistic in your retirement plan and how to help orchestrate that throughout the process. And that is exactly what me and my team are here for, and what we've specialized in for a long time, is helping people get to and through retirement and helping them transition with things that maybe got them to retirement, but it's not going to get them through retirement, and helping them put together that, those pieces to the puzzle, as we call it, to get them to and through retirement. And again, it all starts with that discovery meeting where you can come in and just see if we're a good fit to be the firm to help get you through that transition.
If you'd like to get to know Logan Sadler, to get some answers to your immediate questions, and to kind of feel the way this thing is going to work, all you got to do is call 888-823-PLAN to arrange a discovery meeting. You're under no obligation whatsoever. It's not going to cost you anything at all. You'll get to know him. He can get to know you and find out if you, would be comfortable working together. And I think, a lot of people think they're going to get pressured. A lot of people think they're going to get beaten up when they see a financial advisor. And they're going to be made to feel embarrassed because they haven't done a good enough job, during the accumulation phase. None of that is true. Logan Sadler is not going to judge you, not going to criticize you at all, and it's going to be a nice, pleasant conversation. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call if you'd like to have that opening conversation. It's called a discovery meeting. You can do it in person, one of the offices, Hemet or Redlands, or you can do it via Zoom if you'd like. 888-823-7526. Best way to remember that is 888-823-PLAN. You're listening to the Financial Beat. I'm Ron Stutz along with Logan Sadler. We'll have more coming up in just a moment.
It's getting to know you time.
Hey, Logan, I want to ask you a question here on today's show in the Financial Beat, and this is something random I want to throw at you here. If you could time travel, when and where would you go? Isn't that tough?
That's hard. I mean, if I'm thinking like American history time travel, right? I mean, I'm going to say my answer wants to be like the roaring 20s, right? Where like it would just be such a great time to be alive, to go through all that.
Yeah.
And it seems like such a great time of life, right? Where things were, so many different things were happening in that decade, in that era, where, cars, everything. But my biggest hesitation is obviously you had the Great Depression coming right after that, and then leading into World War II. So I don't know how much I'd want to go back and redo that if I had to, but I think it would be a very interesting time to be alive. And then you all obviously had like, if to be, prime age in the 50s would have been, in the late 50s would have been interesting as well too, because just things were just changing at that later end as well.
Logan, I can see you driving one of those old cars that they had back then.
Yeah, like Great Gatsby style, right? I mean, so it would be a fun time, and I think that's one of my favorite eras to watch, on movies and cinema and things like that. But definitely not saying it's the most luxurious, especially going into that later decade there in the 30s.
Driving one of those old cars and having a hat on and dressed to the nines, man, that would be you.
Hey, well, hopefully if the time travel happens, I'll see you there.
All right. Logan Sadler, Regary Financial. We'll be right back with more of the Financial Beat.
Are you tired of feeling like taxes are draining your bank account? Do you want to keep more of your hard-earned money in your pocket? Then download Logan Sadler's 2023 Guide to Tax Planning. This guide is your key to tax optimization and is filled with expert advice, the latest tax laws, and strategies for reducing your tax burden. With the help of Regary Financial and Insurance, you can rest assured that you're making the most of your retirement savings. Just text the word ADVICE to the number 21000 and get the guide for free. Just text ADVICE to 21000.
Do you hear that? That's the sound of a plan that has some serious issues. Much better. That's the sound of a plan that was created by someone listening to the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler. So which sound is your financial plan making?
We're back now with more of the Financial Beat. The beat goes on with Logan Sadler. And Logan, of course, is at Regary Financial. He's the VP, Chief Investment Officer, all-around good guy. 888-823-PLAN. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call to talk to a real financial advisor, someone who takes everything into consideration, your lifestyle, your hopes and dreams when it comes to retirement, what you want to achieve in your retirement. It's all about retiring to something, not just retiring from something as well. What are you going to do in your retirement? Going to do a lot of traveling? It's going to cost a lot of money to do that. You want to just stay at home and watch TV? That's not very exciting. You want to spend a lot of time with your grandkids? That sort of thing. Logan can talk to you about all of that. In fact, he gets to know his clients quite well. And if you'd like to begin that process, get to know Logan a little bit, all you got to do is call this number, 888-823-PLAN. 888-823-PLAN. Logan Sadler and Regary Financial, Emmett and Redlands, or you can have a conversation via Zoom if you like. So, my name is Ron Stutz, always one of the highlights of my week to sit down and talk to Logan, and we're going to go to the mailbag now because we have some great questions that have come in. And the first question today is from Doug in Idlewild. Doug says, is a reverse mortgage a bad idea? I've been thinking about it as a way to have a little more money to spend on traveling during our early years of retirement. Logan, what do you think?
Yeah, great question, Doug. Reverse mortgages, one thing I always say is it's sometimes a sensitive subject, right? And I think with good reasoning, where there's a lot of considerations with reverse mortgages, right? I'll talk about some of them, but the first thing, as you know, I'll give my disclosure, not advice or anything like that. One thing I'd say, come in, let's get to understand your situation. I do work with a qualified a person who operates reverse mortgages, totally a separate company from ours, and it's somebody we refer out to, and I trust him a lot to walk you through the pros and cons of that. But one of the things I always say, first, let's talk through it and see some of the pros and cons. So one of the biggest things you want to look at is there's a lot of considerations, right? Number one, are you planning to sell the house down the road? Is it your forever home? Is it one of those things that you wanted to leave behind to the kids, right? Is that one of the asset classes? Because reverse mortgages, once done, you lose, liquidity and equity and things like that. But what they do provide is they do provide you with some extra cash to, either create some income with, or maybe get rid of a house payment and things like that, of the mortgage. So it can create a lot of financial flexibility for some, but there's just so many considerations you want to go through to make sure it's the right fit for you. I do have clients that have done reverse mortgages and they've worked out great. I've had some that have, before they met with us, where they did one and it just didn't make a lot of sense for their situation. So it's something where you really want to walk through what the pros and cons of it are, and I'd be happy to kind of sit and talk with you on that. We go through that with a lot of our clients if they're thinking about going that route. Let's have a conversation, see if it makes any sense, and if it does, we could refer you out to somebody who's who's an expert in that realm.
Okay, good answer. Thank you so much. And Doug, we appreciate your sending us a question. If you want to talk more about that, if maybe you didn't catch some of that, call 888-823-PLAN and have a conversation about it with Logan Sadler, and he can put you in the right direction. Another question here is from Charlotte, and Charlotte is in Fallbrook. Charlotte says, how does a Roth conversion work? Is this a strategy worth considering?
Yeah, great question, Charlotte. I think that, there's a lot of advantages to that, right? Roth conversions, for those of you that don't know, is if you're driving around right now, don't take your hands off the wheel, but maybe if you're sitting down at home or on the porch, you could do this. So put up two hands, right? Think of them as two buckets. When money goes from a taxable bucket, right? So tax deferred, meaning your 401ks and things like that, you have not paid taxes on it. So when it goes from your left hand to your right hand, the right hand being tax-free, there's somebody in the middle there. There's a third hand, and that is Uncle Sam, right? So as you convert money, you owe taxes on it. So always think of it those two hands. When it goes from bucket one to bucket two, taxes are due at your ordinary income rate. So when doing a Roth conversion, it's very important to understand, why am I doing the Roth conversion? Am I going to be in a higher tax bracket in retirement? Then a Roth conversion makes a lot of sense. Will I potentially be affected by rising tax rates? Again, maybe a Roth conversion makes a lot of sense. But I've seen some clients where maybe they're in the highest tax bracket. They make $500,000 or $600,000 plus a year, and in retirement, they're going to make $100,000 a year. Well, it doesn't make sense to convert a lot of money at the highest tax bracket when you're going to be in a lower tax bracket in retirement, right? So there's obviously some things to walk through there. Legacy and things like that can be great with Roth conversions, because you're basically going to leave behind tax-free money now instead of taxable money. So there's some things that Roth conversions make a lot of sense for, but it really pertains to your situation and how you're currently structured, what your income and things like that are. And then we can go through if Roth conversions make sense. But I will say, for a lot of our clients, they are a great talking point, and it's something we do explore a lot, because it does give us some potential tax-free flexibility down the road.
Okay, Charlotte, good question. You want to follow up? Call 888-823-PLAN, 888-823-PLAN. You can have a longer discussion about this, about Roth conversions with Logan Sadler. Again, 888-823-PLAN. One more question today, Logan. It's from Katie in Colton. And Katie says, do I need to have $1 million saved before I think about retiring? Boy, how many times have you been asked that question? It seems like most of It seems like most of my friends have $1 million or more. You want to tackle that one more time?
Yeah, let's do it. As relating back to earlier segments here, I mean, well, Katie, you might need $2.2 million, right, to be considered wealthy or to be able to retire, but you might only need $500, right? And I always say you can't compare yourself to friends, and I always tell people that, because they'll say, well, my friend's in 100% stocks, and you're telling me to go 40% bonds or annuity or whatever it is, right? And it's like, well, they might have a totally different situation and outlook than you do, right? Or comfortability. So I think the short answer is no, right? You might need more than $1 million. You might need less than $1 million. I've had plenty of clients retire with $300,000 or $500,000 or $800,000 and be totally fine, be able to live out the retirement they want based off their assets and their lower budget maybe and things like that. I've had plenty of clients where it's like, I know, ma'am, sir, you have $1 million, but to do what you want to do, you need almost $2 million, right? So you really don't know until, I always say, you come in, give us a call, come in for that discovery meeting. Let's look at your situation, where you're at, not your friends or neighbors, but where you're at, what your comfortabilities are, and let's see if we could put together a plan that might give you the confidence and the success rate to be able to sustain the retirement you've always envisioned. And it always starts with giving us a call and coming in for that discovery meeting, and we could sit down and see if we're a good fit to help you, again, transition to and through retirement.
Well, this This gives me an opportunity to say one more time, retirement planning is really an individual thing. There's no one size fits all, no generic plan for retirement. You don't have to have $1 million to retire. You may need more, you may need less. It all depends on the individual, and that's why it's important to call Logan Sadler, because he gets to know you, finds out what's important to you, and then you can go from there. 888-823-PLAN, 888-823-7526. That's the number to call for Regary Financial. Regary has been around for a very long time. 2 convenient offices, Redlands and also Hemet. And, of course, they have great partnerships with local CPAs, attorneys, mortgage lenders, real estate agents, even Medicare specialists, and can talk to you about anything related to your financial life. You can get a discovery meeting at no cost, and when you have that discovery meeting, it's really kind of a getting to know you opportunity. Logan Sadler is a person you will talk to, so why not reach out, call this number today, leave your name and phone number, you'll get a call back, and then you can sit down and have a conversation with Logan either via Zoom or maybe in one of the convenient offices. 888-823-PLAN. That's your number to call to make it happen. Not going to cost you anything, not going to carry with it any kind of obligation at all. This is Ron Stutz along with Logan Sadler. And Logan, I had fun today. You've talked about a lot of very important stuff, and I know that our listeners benefited from that conversation.
Well, thank you. Yeah, hopefully they do. That's always my main goal of the show. Obviously, we're hoping to grow the business and meet a lot of you guys out there that are, interested in retirement planning. But obviously, the most important thing of this show is just to provide you guys some value and some education that might pertain to your situation. So thank you for stopping by and checking us out, and appreciate the support on the show, as well as the YouTube channel and other sources. And we're going to be back here again next week with another one.
All right, looking forward to it. Again, that number, 888-823-PLAN, Logan Sadler at Regary Financial. This has been the Financial Beat.
Regary Financial and Insurance Services, Inc. and BD Financial Group, Inc. are separate and independent entities. The information provided in this presentation is presented for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute financial, investment, tax, or legal advice, nor does it constitute an offer or solicitation to buy or sell any securities.